Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Engineering Moments podcast, where we talk about software development teams and we look at it from a leadership lens. So, if you're a product manager, engineering manager, tech lead, team lead, a director, or if you're playing any sort of role in leading a software development team or teams, stick around. We'll have a lot of good stuff for you. Today, we're talking about leading teams from a technical point of view. And with me is Valentin. I hope I got that perfect.
Yeah.
And he has been a tech lead for a long time. I already did the intro, but if you've got a little bit of something to add to your intro, just go ahead.
Um, yeah. No, I've been a developer for a dozen years, and I've been a tech lead for a bit.
Okay, cool. First of all, I just want to ask you, how's your weekend going? I know this is sort of Christmas coming up, and a lot of companies are sort of winding down in terms of delivery and stuff. So does this weekend give you does it feel like a relax before a rush, or does it feel like an extended sort of relaxation period for you?
No, it doesn't. um, no, we've been kind of hard at work because on my job we are starting to pick up the pace in signing up customers. Um,
Mhm.
so we have a long list of features they all expect, and we've been hard at work on this. So we really haven't winded down yet. Hopefully we will by the end of the year. But
Nice.
no, so far we haven't.
All right, awesome. So a good place for us to start today is around the definition, right? So what does it mean, as a tech lead, as a senior engineer or team lead or whatever? What does it mean to you, like leading from a technical standpoint? What does that look like from I would say day to day, but I find that in tech, I always kind of think about what do you do across a week, because there's almost different things that happen in different days, but in a week it kind of captures most of your responsibility. So if you can sort of tell me what a week looks like for you in terms of like leading from a technical standpoint.
Well, it has changed over the years, and I think now I do have a typical day. Um,
Okay.
I used to work through a week at a time, but it felt hard to keep track of what I had done and what I had left to do sometimes. So I mostly try to stick to the same schedule every day, unless I got like special meetings, like anything related to our current cycle and stuff like that. Of course, it's gonna happen bi-weekly, but other than that, I try to have my days be the same. So I usually start with reading pull requests. That's the first thing I try to do, so that when engineers come in, because I'm usually kind of early, they do have their pull request reviewed, and they can like start working on that first thing in the morning if they want to. Um, I don't really deal with emails much because we don't have any email yet. We are still a small company. I used to read tickets, add implementation details when things were not too clear, try to see with the PMs if anything had needed to be clarified, if anything felt um, left out. And once I was kind of done with all that, I do go back to coding. And I do tend to do more of it now because, again, small company, not that
Hans?
many pull requests to review, and yeah, more things
Okay.
to code.
I want to touch on something that you sort of highlighted in terms of um, before, when you were looking at things from a week to week basis, and then you want to make sure you don't lose things. Is there any specific thing you do to track your work in terms of to make sure you don't miss out on tasks? And I'm thinking more of the sort of long running task in terms of, let's say, um, there's a task. Let me find a good example. There's a task that maybe you want to help someone improve or something like that. It's not just one task. It's a series of tasks, and those tasks might change depending on, events. Is there anything you particularly do to make sure that you stay on top of these sort of long running tasks that are not essentially team tasks? A lot of them maybe are your responsibility on a, so is there anything you do to keep track of them?
Yeah, so I have a very hard time with that, um, which is why sending me a message on Slack asking me to do something is a terrible idea, because I will most likely forget about that. But what I do is I kind of rely on Slack for some things, because Slack has this feature where you can ask it to remind you of something later on.
Okay.
So I do tend to rely on that for tasks that don't fit any software we use, like linear, something that doesn't go on linear, or any other task management. I kind of tend to rely on Slack
Okay.
reminder feature.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, and then the sort of second question I think I wanted to talk about is a lot of times in software development teams, you happen or like responsibilities thrust on you in terms of you're a senior engineer, and then all of a sudden someone decides, or whatever happens, maybe the tech lead leaves or the team lead leaves, and then it's up to you to step up. And there isn't always a manuscript for this, right? So let's say you find yourself either you're in a new team, or let's say that you're in a new team, and you become the lead. What do you do? What are the first couple of things you do to sort of get a better understanding of the technical landscape of that team?
I think I take a look at their pull request. That's so I'm not sure for something like a new team in the same company, because the culture should be the same. So I
Hmm.
would expect it to kind of be the same.
Let's say it's
But
a new job.
yeah, if
Let's
it's a
say,
new
yeah.
job, then
Mhm.
definitely the CI. I think the CI, the continuous integration processes, tell a lot about the team culture. Things like, do they have automated tests or do they not? Do they have static typing? Is it enforced? Do they have linters? Do they have I don't know, prettier setup if they're doing JavaScript? Things like that, I think, tells a lot about what the priorities are. Um,
Okay.
so,
What
for
about?
example, if yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
if you join and they have no automated tests, it could be a red flag. It could be because they just don't care, they just want to push code, but it could also be because they want to push code very fast for some reason. Maybe they are in a very tight market, and the time to ship code is more important than the stability of a platform, and that kind of tells you a picture of what the priorities are and what they're ready to um,
Compromise?
accept as a constraint.
Okay. And what about things like documentation or even monitoring? Do you look at those things, and how important do those things become in terms of assessing where a team is from a technical point of view?
So, documentation is really important, but I don't think I've been in any company where it's been like done to the T. It's very hard to produce good documentation. It's very, very hard. I've tried and failed, but um, It is very hard because you try to write down what you know of what you've done, but you don't really know what others don't know about what you've done. So you just write a first draft, and then people just come to you and ask you questions, and then you have to reintegrate them, and it's a lot of work. So I don't tend to lean too much on documentation to get the gist of what a team is like, because like if they have great documentation, then the team is going to be great. Like you can be sure they have automated tests, yeah, they have a good CI running, but it's really the last thing I think
Okay.
that I would look into. And you were asking about
Monitoring.
oh
Monitoring,
yeah,
that was the second
monitoring.
one.
Yeah, monitoring. I love monitoring. All the graphs, the metrics, the logs just going off. I love it. And yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about it because we didn't have any monitoring when I joined. We put some, and since then, but the company was still small, so we didn't have any monitoring. So I didn't think of that. But yeah, monitoring is a very good thing to look at as well, because you can see what I know
Hello.
what their priorities is. You can see what they are logging, what they're looking at when they have monitoring. So it tells an interesting picture as well.
Right. All right. That's good. I think that for me, one of the things um, that I've always looked at in terms of, I think that the first one you talked about in terms of what's our like, are we a company that wants to make the code perfect? Well, not perfect, but are we how okay are we with like shipping stuff fast and allowing ourselves create tech debts versus having a mindset where it feels like you want to create as little tech debt as possible, and this will usually inform me about the general mindset. But yeah, interesting sort of different viewpoints. And then I think the next thing I want to talk about, like, okay, let's say you're in the team, you kind of have a good idea of what the team is doing, what the team culture is like from a technical point of view, and now you started interacting with you spoke about the PMs and all the other cross collaboration things that you need to do. How do you keep the team aligned in terms of sort of technical priorities, because they can get tricky sometimes? How do you make sure that everyone's rowing in the same direction without feeling like you're um, having to having to manage every or lots of small bits of information, right? How do you make sure that um, you're not micromanaging, but like you're keeping everyone in line and everyone is focused on the goal?
Um, I think one of the first step is to be clear on everyone's objectives. So not everyone so not everyone deals with the task they have the same way. Some will skip tests, some will add a lot of unnecessary tests, some will do a lot of refactoring for things that are kind of secondary. I think it's first you need to understand what each member of the team objective or kind of style is. And then I think one of the most important thing, one of the thing I think I've changed the most my mind about are pull requests. They have become front and center in my workflow today, and I think it's a very powerful tool to improve the quality of the code, to improve the team, to improve the culture, because it is essentially a gateway. A pull request is a developer asking, well, depending on how it's done, others, can I push this code? And it's a great opportunity to say, no, you cannot. I think it's often missed. I was in a company where pull requests were more like checkpoints. You just open a pull request and some people just come in and click on approve, and then it just gets merged automatically. And I think it's a waste. So of course, sometimes people are like, oh no, wait, it's not gonna happen for this reason. Most of the time, it's the CI that blocked the pull request, and so it gave me this idea that pull requests were an unnecessary friction. But I've since recovered from that, and I think they are a great place for discussion and enforcing the team culture. Like, for example, you decide that tests are important and you read the pull request and you see that there are no tests. So you can open up a discussion. You can say, why are there no tests? Like, oh, I noticed there wasn't any test. Is this something that is urgent to push production? Or can you take the time to write the test? And if it's urgent, can you write the test afterward? And it helps enforce the technical priorities on the team without too much micromanaging, because it doesn't happen in front of them. Like, even if you read everyone's PR very, very narrowly, it won't be felt as being under surveillance if you don't just put comments on every line. It's just, oh yeah, I had missed that on my PR and it got caught, so it's nice. So I would say it's a very good tool for that.
All right. I want to say that I also feel like pull requests are a really powerful place to implement, or at least to control quality, right?
Yeah.
And there's some sort of good ways to do PRs, and there's some bad ways. I remember managing a team where some people were pushing really large PRs, and naturally, when you push really large PRs, there's a lot. It creates a lot of noise and a lot of work because everyone's commenting on different areas of the code, so you can't really focus on, and obviously you'll miss, things will likely get missed. So how do you help the team and make sure that they adopt the best practices for like pull requests in terms of like size, in terms of clarity, even the people who are reviewing? How do you make sure people aren't just bringing their ego and people are like reviewing reviewing code for the right reasons? Giving the right type of reviews, and put it that way.
So that's a tough question because I think it leans on the management side of things, which I'm not too experienced in. But I think, again, pull requests are a good place to start. If someone opens a pull request that's too large, you can hint at how they could split it to make it smaller. Like, this part could be removed in its own PR. So oftentimes it's a bit too late. Like, large PRs exist for a reason. It's not just a bundle of unconnected changes put together. It's often something that started small and then more pieces were added. So it's always a bit too late when a large PR opens. But it can be made clear that, I think it has to be made clear that this is not a good behavior, and while this could work, like, you can review the pull request, you can make the comment, they can make the change requested. It is a lot of work and a lot of wasted time, and it kind of depends on the developer's personality. If they are eager to push their work to production, it can be a good time to say, okay, you've made a large PR, we try not to do that because it will take a lot of time to reach production, and that will create some frustration on their end that they will try to avoid. So then hopefully they make smaller PRs. But sometimes you just have bad actors that just don't really care, and they just like, they don't care. Oh, their code won't reach production, it doesn't matter. Their job is done. It's not their problem anymore. And I think these kind of situations are very tough because it can fester, I think, in the team. Someone not caring, someone not abiding to the culture, because it's not just one person not doing as everybody has decided, it's one person doing something that will influence others, and others will think, oh, so I can make a large PR actually. And that's why I think it leans on the management side. That's when I think a manager sometimes should come in and say, okay, there is an issue with the way you do your pull requests, and maybe you should discuss it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and probably gives me the opportunity to share some of my experiences around this. So first of all, I've heard someone explain culture in the best possible way. It's like a culture is the sum of all the things you allow minus all the things you don't allow, essentially. So the more you allow something to happen, the more it becomes part of your culture. And if you want something to not be part of your culture, you need to stop it every time it happens. That's how you sort of balance out. Now, the reason why I say this is that, um, yeah, like at some, I got to a point where I had to, like when we had the issue with large PRs, we had to talk as a team and say, okay, what do we, and agree as a team. So it wasn't just, it didn't feel like, because as a manager, sometimes, you know, people can feel like you're saying things that are, um, you know, because you have sort of the agency, you're just setting rules that sometimes are unrealistic. But I think that one thing that I did that made a lot of sense was when we agreed on sort of can't really rely on a specific size, but the idea of small PRs. Then I had a conversation with some of the more junior engineers who had been pushing large PRs, and like, okay, do you understand? Like, how easy is it for you to actually understand the logical separation of how you split maybe one Jira ticket into several small PRs. And I think that digging, speaking to them and getting feedback, that was an area where they really struggled. And I had someone, I shared some of my ideas, but then I had one of my more senior engineers work with them to sort of help them sort of think about it in a different way. And I think that sometimes when you set policies in a team, you need to follow it up with a bit of education to help people
Yeah,
grasp it, so that it's
yeah,
not it's not seen as like um, a roadblock, I guess for individuals. But yeah, just thought that it would be helpful to share some of my experiences in that area. Um, right, okay, we can move on to the next question, and this is one that I really like because it's very tricky. Sort of balancing hands-on coding with leading the team, like you say, being a technical leader, uh, it can be a lot of work. So how do you decide when to do which one? When to sort of dive deep into the code, or when to take a step back and look at the big picture and figure out what needs to happen?
um, so I usually don't decide anymore because um, yeah, I just begin my day with everything that is not coding, and
Okay.
once it is done, I move on to code. So sometimes I do. So I try to avoid being on the critical path in order to be able to do that. Meaning any feature that is very urgent or that other engineers would depend on, I try to avoid taking them. Sometimes there is no choice because I'm the only one that could do it in a timely manner. But if I can avoid it, I do not take up these tasks so that I am free not to do any coding. And so I begin my day by reading the pull request, by reviewing the tickets, etc., etc. And once I'm done with all that, I start coding on my hopefully non-blocking tasks. This way I don't have to make a decision. I don't have to say, okay, I'm gonna split half and half, or 1/4 and 3/4, or I'm gonna stop at this time and start doing this. And it kind of flows naturally. And I do it this way and not the other because, well, first, coding is never done. You're never done when you start coding something, because once you've reached the end of your task, there is more. And also because I do like coding, so if I start, I'm gonna make sure I don't stop. So I do start with the tasks I'm not taken in on, and things like the pull request. At some point, there is none to review anymore, so you just stop and move on.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. And is that, do you find that that's been successful? Because I guess maybe you've done it a different way in the past, or like how successful has this approach been, do you think?
Yeah, so at first, when I became a tech lead, I kept being a senior engineer instead. So I just kept coding, and sometimes I was like, oh, wait, I do have to review PRs, or oh, wait, there are tickets that I should handle. And it always happened as an afterthought, it always happened after, and it always pushed the problems onto the team. Like, they were waiting on me doing my job, which is not great, because if I don't do my job as an individual contributor, then it's fine. I'm the only one not doing my job. If I don't do my job as a tech lead, I'm impacting the whole team. And so it took a bit to be used to, and I ended up in this workflow where I just do everything non-coding first, and then I move on to coding, and that helps being always up to date and never blocking the team, and still being able to code.
I guess, I'm just looking at that now. I'm thinking about um, some of my experiences around that. It's like when I first made the switch from being a developer to being a manager, like I always think of management as being, and if you watch Star Trek, there's a piece where they say in space, you can go up, you can go down, you can go left, you can go right. And for me, that's kind of how management felt when I first went in, because I was still coding, but then I had to do a lot of management stuff, and it was like um, I just hung on to the thing that I knew the most, which is coding. So I ended up doing a lot of coding, and just kind of focusing on the technical bits. And then after a while, I realized like, hey, like I shouldn't be spending so much time on this. I know it's very different because a tech lead, you're still pretty much a technical resource within the team. But as a manager, you don't want to be a technical resource within the team as much as you can help it. But yeah, just an interesting uh, bit of reminiscing from me. So yeah, well, my last question here is, what do you do when your team has strong but different opinions about a technical approach? How do you conduct those debates? How do you navigate them, and how do you come to a maybe not a consensus, but how do you come to an agreement?
Yeah, so it's never too easy, because it's basically handling a conflict, and it's never fun. I think the first step, again, is to be clear on what everyone's objective is. So I don't know if it's about changing a library, for example, and some people are for, some people are against. It's important not to know like what their position is, but why. Like, why do some want a new library? Why do some not want a new library? Because I think there is often a miscommunication on that, the expected output of the decision, because it's never about just changing a library. It's about trying something new. It's about having something that's more reliable. Maybe something about having a library that's still maintained. There are a dozen reasons just for this example of changing a library. So I think it's important to understand what each team member's position is. Not position, but what their reason for their position is. And then you can start debating on that rather than debating on, yes, I want the new library, no, I don't want it. And so once it's been clarified, I think it's a bit easier to say, okay, you want, you have this opinion for this reason. Would it be reasonable for you to accept a compromise on this or not? Because once you understand the reasons, there are often a lot of compromises you can do, because we're all adults around the table, and I mean, we are ready to not have what we asked for, but it's important, I think, to be listened to feel that you've been listened to say, oh, you want to do this for this reason. I get it, but like it's gonna take too much time, and we can't allow that right now. So maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, maybe never. But I think it's important that people feel heard, and once they do feel heard, it's much easier, I think, to just let go if you don't have what you want.
I totally agree, 100%. I think that giving people the avenue to sort of explain why they want something and how they feel like, this might benefit over a different, approach. I think that as long as you give them the opportunity to express if the decision goes against them in terms of maybe you pick the other approach, I think that they can feel, you do it in a way that makes them feel like, yeah, you good, you made a really solid contribution, but this is the reasons why we've chosen this other thing. And I think that one other approach that I find that really helps in these sort of situations, well, not all, but if you can test the actual outcome. So, for instance, I remember once we had a sort of a dispute like this in terms of like a specific design for approach for designing a database, and in terms of the schema. And, we were having back and forth, arguments or debates. And I think that the decision was like, let's just write the queries. Let's do the two designs. You do your design. These are the actions we intend to perform for this functionality. Write the queries that would support these. Write the queries that's sort of only a part of it, I know, but immediately we could already see that for what the outcome we wanted, one set of queries looked more likely that it would give us what we wanted. So in that case, the decision sort of writes itself or makes itself, So that's another tool that I found that can be really useful when sort of trying to pick trade-offs. If you can test the outcome, then do that. But yeah, right. That was my last question. I guess this was a really, really interesting episode, and I really liked your views. I will look at PRs in a very, very different way. I think that I like some of the context that you put around them, and I hope that people who watch this will learn that as well. Yeah. So I guess last thing is, what's up for the rest of your weekend? Any plans, or are you just waiting for Monday?
Yeah, no, I'm waiting for Monday. No, I'm gonna play with some friends. It's the evening right now.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just going to play with some friends, and then I go to bed.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a
Thank you.
good day. Bye.
Bye.